Welcome back to Newsday, and on to this special coverage of the Edo elections, and of course the collation is currently going on. We have Dr. Okey Ikechukwu in our Abuja studios to give perspective on current events there. Dr. Ikechukwu, it's good to have you with us. What are your impressions so far on the elections and of course the collations you've been observing so far?
Well, very few surprises. But first of all, I'd like to preface my comments by congratulating the people of Edo State. They've proven everybody wrong in the initial suspicion that there might be violence, so that I believe, on the whole, all things considered, they conducted themselves with dignity. They came out to vote. That is good. The other thing, of course, also is to commend INEC. So far, from what we are seeing, there's not enough evidence of desperation to suggest a sense of panic, and we may end up, I hope and I pray, using this election to earn some greater indications of credibility for all the actors, the two parties, INEC and Nigerians generally. The interplay and outplay of power in Edo State is what we are seeing, and it will appear from the results that are coming in so far. If the pattern is maintained, it will suggest a fundamental shift, a move away from Noshomole dominance, the emergence of a new, if you like, power center. But I hope that power center will be one of consensus, integrating participants from all sides, so that the consistent, if you like, balkanization of state politics along 2 or 3 poles will coalesce into one, so that development of Edo State and Edo people will be the primary objective of government, not the sustenance and defense of partisan positions. So far, so good. I think it's impressive. I commend all the actors. And like I said, it may yet turn out to be something that INEC, APC, PDP, Edo people will hold up and say, let's do it the way they did it in Edo State in September 2020.
Indeed, as acting as a litmus test. Dr. INEC itself says Edo election was near perfect. Can you describe it as such?
Well, that is open to argument, but if we examine that statement with a sense of history, I think INEC is closer to the truth than those who disagree with INEC. Logistical problems were minimal, evidence of violence was minimal, troublemaking from the major parties and even the minor ones were minimal, and INEC, despite the initial suspicions that it looks like they're not ready enough. If you remember, people were really getting worried when, after quite some time after voting, the results were not getting to the collation center. So I think this is a good, if you like, rung of the ladder to build on. INEC has done well, and for once in a long time, one is a bit relieved that all those non-INEC staff who take part in elections, that their lives were not unduly endangered in this case. And why this for me is very significant is that this is Edo State, presumed to be the headquarters of if you do me, I do you. And all of a sudden, you have minimal bloodshed, you have minimal troublemaking. So INEC, I think, should be encouraged. If you say near perfect against the history of elections in Nigeria, I'll say yes. And I'll say that INEC should keep it this way and improve until it will not be near perfect. It will be what an election should be.
Indeed, Dr. Ikechukwu. Now, people's resolve to vote their choice of candidate, as we've seen in these elections, how can that be replicated nationally in Nigeria?
Well, the way it can be replicated is, first of all, for us to get into what you call value-driven politics. You know, somebody will tell you ideology-driven, avoid all the big grammar. Political parties should engage in what they've not been doing since 1999, which is mobilization of the electorate. Have regular monthly rallies, rotate it among the different local governments in your state. Now it will create opportunities for members of the party to meet each other, for party chairmen across the local governments to meet each other, for transporters to be paid money to convey members, and it will build solidarity in the state. And over time, it will be possible for party members to know what their party stands for. It will be possible for people in the course of this progressive interaction to develop preferences. There was something Samegu did as governor of Ebonyi State. If you recall, throughout his tenure, the PDP kept sweeping. And the method was quite simple. You may recall that when he ran for chairmanship of the PDP, I was director general of his campaign. Egwu adopted a simple formula. If it's your part of the state that's going to produce a candidate in the next election, you will consult stakeholders, consult elders. Tell me, who would you want to represent you? Whoever emerges from the people is then made the party's candidate, so he cannot lose elections. Everybody knows who is credible, but for as long as there is no fermentation, there's no engagement, there's no meeting, except during elections, when you call people and give them money to vote, for so long will there not be people's vote or citizens' vote. So step number one, begin actually to function as a political party. Begin political education, begin to establish preferences. Stop lying to the people and pretending, oh, you know, this is our man, but everybody knows he gave you 500 million or 1 billion to be the candidate. You create an aura of hypocrisy that runs through. Now, the two major parties and all the other parties, the two major parties epitomize this fraud. At the level of the party, there's no internal democracy. And so the people outside also will tell themselves, well, why should I sweat it out? Let me collect my bit and go away. In any case, this was never about us. So they could then move it to the national level, progressively driving this agenda, progressively eliminating those who represent the opposite. But it's not a one-day business, because those who are not, if you like, on the upright path, and the majority, they have more money. Unless one or several of them decide to commit, if you like, a peer suicide, by opting to fund the opposite of what they represent at the moment. Oshomole had the chance to do that. He was a popular labor leader, very popular. But by the time he became governor for 8 years, that his profile as a people's man suffered a major setback. As party chairman, it even suffered more, because it would appear, and I do not know for sure because I'm not a member of the APC, that impunity, a certain braggadocio without attention to dignity and decency, a movement away from the very marginal gains of a fundamentally coherent APC occurred under him. And so they lost more mileage, they lost more internal cohesion, he lost the seat. And so at that level, you see that even in the choice of candidates, the party is not different from what the PDP had been known for, which is notorious commitment to god-fatherism. And so I believe that progressively the parties should strive to outdo each other, but without mobilization, without political education, without having party ideologues. Before the election that removed Jonathan, APC had an ideologue in the current Minister of Information. He was upfront, upcoming, a thorn in the flesh of the PDP. He had issues he was taking up. Of course, it all collapsed the moment they came into power. But a party spokesperson should not be somebody who is making announcements only, reacting, making press releases, quarreling in the paper. That is rubbish. A party ideologue must exist. Ojo Maduekwe nearly was playing that role for the PDP, even though he wasn't the spokesperson. So the parties need an ideologue. People need to remember that, oh, the man for Labour Party said this, and this one for APC said that, and PDP said the other. Why do people still talk of MKO, KO Mbadiwe? Why do they talk of Eyeta? Why do people still remember Balewa and say the man with the golden voice? These were men who had something to say, who believed in something, who stood for something. Today you have a multitude of speech makers, among whom you cannot remember a credible sentence or a meaningful phrase, because these are gestural without conviction. The target is public office. That's why in the last 20 years, there's been a growth. If you take inventory, if the National Office of Statistics will take the trouble to go and confirm that over 90% of billionaires in Nigeria today became billionaires within the last 20 years, and to confirm that out of that number, up to even 50% of them have 50 people in their employ who earn a living. So it's about national transformation, and it should begin at the level of party democracy. It will spread.
Party democracy, ideologue. Our last guest didn't seem to agree with you, because I asked him that question on whether it was time for laws to be made to change so that people couldn't just cross parties. So I want to ask you too now, do you think it is time for laws to be made so that concerning changing parties?
You make laws and take laws seriously when you have a law-governed society. My question, counter question will be to you will be, how many of the laws in Nigeria that exist today are not violated? And who is held to ransom or taken up by the law itself, even for violating the law? So my take is that not a question of making more laws, we have enough. It's a question of following through the laws that exist. If you decide that for crossing parties, a law should be made, I'll ask you, is religious conversion not possible? Is further development of knowledge not possible? Is insight not possible? Don't I have a right to change my position, my convictions, my attitudes, my group of friends if I come to new realizations? If I'm a drunkard, a smoker, and a part-time armed robber, and suddenly it dawns on me that society cannot develop if I continue to do this and recruit other people, I decide to change, have I committed a crime? So changing of parties in itself is absolutely in order. I could move from being a capitalist to become a socialist, a labor advocate, or a freelance troublemaker just campaigning about good weather and nature. That is within my right. The law allows that. So to talk of making a law and say, oh, you know, the law forbids this, it creates a delusional impression that the National Assembly is actually more important than it is. The psyche and character of the Nigerian citizen is not changed by a new law. It's changed by the conduct of leaders and the enforcement of the existing law. I mean, look at the law. I think there's a new, the thing on sexual harassment and the rest of it. The content appears to focus on universities. Is that really where it takes place? What is it that happens when state officials go for functions? Is it not true in some cases, as alleged, that some people are procured for them as part of the entertainment? Some of those who made the laws not involved. So let's not kid ourselves and over-promote irrelevance. I think the National Assembly should be a part-time job. We lived in these countries as a people in the various areas, and we know how to behave. We are spending too much on lawmaking. It is not impacting the citizen. A review of our democracy will also entail a review of the relevance of state and national assemblies. It's creating a new aristocracy of idlers who collect more than they should without earning it. But that's my personal view. So in respect of laws, let's not push it too much. How many of the existing laws are being enforced? And how many of the laws in existence have been violated with real penalties? That's the issue to look at.
Okay.
Very good, Dr. Ikechukwu. Now, still on the issue and away from the laws regarding that, when people change political parties, is it fair on the electorate who voted them on such platforms? Are they getting a good end of the deal here?
That is open to argument. If you vote me in on the platform of, say, Labour Party, and I get in and switch into a party that holds a totally different ideology, it will mean that I've switched platform, and therefore that I'm no longer representing those who accept Labour Party ideals. So it's unfair, and it would be right for me to cede the seat. But that is only in principle. That is in law-governed societies. That's where votings are known to have taken place based on personal conviction, based on ideological argument, based on informed choices by citizens. If you've given us to 2,000 to vote for you, and you're the platform of the Labour Party, you've paid up front for anything we should expect from you. So you go to Abuja or wherever you are located, and then you make your money back. So in principle, and from the ideal platform of this is how it should be, no, it is not fair to the citizens. But in practice, and in Nigeria, where discretion takes over from the law and from laid down procedures, there is actually nothing to choose between the two. But if you make the law, the advantage that will come from it is that it will reduce the number of people who will act irresponsibly in this regard. So the law would actually have some value, because you cannot say, okay, since we are not behaving well, let's not make any law. Whoever kills the other should inherit his place. No. So that's where it comes in. Yes, it's not fair to them. I mean, I recall a program, I think that was far back in 2012, the Leadership Institute in Arlington. We went there, I was one out of people who came from 43 countries. And I discovered that among those who came from the UK, 3 of them were actually contesting elections. And in most of the discussions, all energies across all the European participants was, about fundraising through solicitation, going to the houses of people, and all of that. And eventually it became clear. The funds are raised through the voters. They will hold you to ransom if you misbehave. And so the bulk of your energy is convincing them about how to vote for you, why they should vote for you. But that's not what's going on here. And that's why you find that constituency offices of lawmakers, in most cases, are either nominally open or not open at all, or people are paid to suggest that it is open. So these societies have evolved to the level where public consciousness is in tandem with national ideological decisions, where patriotism is meaningful because there's first of all the concept of the nation, and then national development, and then the citizen. Now these three concepts are totally unevolved among us. If you speak of patriotism today, is it patriotism when you believe the government is one-sided in everything it does? Can you speak of citizenship when your leaders are mobilizing you to think of only what will benefit your section of the country, etc.? So those are some of the issues. And to that extent, yeah, it would be unfair to the citizens if they voted you on one platform and you switched. But I'll make 2 points on that in that regard. People have a right to change their positions. If I'm representing you and all of a sudden it seems to me that your interests will be better served on another platform, what I will do is also to come back to you. Well, you send me out on this. These are the things I found out. This is what I think about it. This is what I suggest we will do, blah, blah, blah. The same people are likely to also say, well, if they believe me, they also to then turn around and say, well, okay, since our interests are better served here, go on still representing us. If it then means that I have to vacate the seat and recontest on the other platform, that's another matter. Political evolution comes from new insights, new realizations, decisions to back them up, and step-by-step growth. It's not by laws that pretend we're all at the same level of maturity, and therefore when you make a law today, it should apply eternally. That is absurd. That is not human. Evolution is part of our identity and history as human beings.
Evolution is very part of our identity. Dr. Ikechukwu, let's look at the numbers now coming out of Edo State and the wide margin we have seen so far. Will you say that Edo State is initiating the end of godfatherism in politics?
I would rather say that what's going on in Edo now is indicative of possibly a terminal end of godfatherism in politics, and that the Lion of Bodilon, Bola Tinubu, should be looking at Edo, and he should also use what's going on there to begin to review his possible history and trajectory going forward. Oshiomhole was seen to have displaced very strong and powerful interests, and then he came on, tried to create a legacy, then picked a candidate who is the current incumbent governor and who is now knocking out his own structures. Now, yeah, so I would think that godfatherism has suffered a major setback, not because of godfatherism itself, but because of what people have now come to see to be godfatherism. And I'll touch on that, I will expand on that a little. The very notion of godfatherism is not new. It's been part of our political history. Sir Ahmadu Bello was a godfather, so was Zik, so was Awolowo, so were so many others. But the role of a political godfather is to produce ideological godsons, not economic looters whose hand they will use to pick from the national treasury or state treasury. So the concept of godfatherism, got violated, and it became absurd. Because even in its origin in religion, your godfather, his task is, he is your moral father, who is to make sure you remain loyal to the faith. In fact, your parents, your biological parents, could call your godfather or send you to him for 3 days for discipline. This boy is going astray. This girl is going astray if he's a godmother. Initially, it wasn't so. Parents could be their godchildren, but the church at that time looked at it and said, look, can parents remain guardians of the faith for their children? If the children also see them quarreling and fighting, that's how it began to change. Now, those days when Awo, Amadu Bello, Zik, Waziri, Balewa, and all of them will look at people and say, that young man or that young woman, and make him under secretary. Let's see what he will look like in the next 5 years. Let's see whether in the next 15 years he could be the party secretary or chairman or vice chairman or spokesperson. You're nurturing a new set. With the return of our democracy, god-fatherism degenerated into looting, consistent with the fact the Nigerian state had become a criminal enterprise, where scoundrels known by everyone to the last man emerged and were addressed as His Excellency, or distinguished or honorable, totally without dishonor. Those who took part in the what do you call it, in the rigging played that part. So now in Edo State, it is no longer, or we are seeing a case where it's not possible for somebody to say, I'm backing this person. Yes, Oshiomhole has a candidate. That candidate, from what I gather, is also backed by many powerful people in APC. And the people are saying, back them if you like, carry them on your head, blow trumpets, but we are going to make our own choice. It just might be. Because if you remember, in one of the southwestern states, where they chose a governorship candidate, I think about 2 months ago, there was an endorsed candidate of the PDP who is a serving deputy governor. What happened? The people rejected him. The party leadership gave directives, it didn't work. Money was brought and shared. The people said, we have had enough of this. We need a governor. We need our own governor. And the party candidate lost. So I think this is indicative of the better evolution of national political consciousness, progressive retirement of the never-do-wells who have been parading themselves as elder statesmen, party chieftains, but who are not adding value to the life of the people. Because look at the roads they used to go home. All of them across the federation, and it's not about PDP, APC, or any party at all. A political leadership elite that cannot be embarrassed. We no longer need that. And there might be hope in what is going on that the events in Edo State might cascade, in fact, likely to cascade into a national pattern, and that will lead to the rescue of the Nigerian state from the years of locusts we've been seeing for quite a while now.
Indeed, Dr. Ikechukwu, cascading into a national pattern, as you said. Now, emphasis was laid on the contestant here in Edo, obviously, and in this regard, do you think Nigeria is ripe for independent candidacy on different levels of governance based on people's faith in a contestant?
Yeah, that is a controversial one, but I'll try to make an entry. Independent candidacy is conceivable, is possible, but it can be money procured. I think we should give it a try. If you remember in the last governorship election, Osita Chidoka contested, even though by the advertised vote, what do you call it, zoning, advertised, not necessarily solemnly agreed to. It was said, oh, he came from a zone that shouldn't send a candidate. That came around, there was a round table in which I took part, and everybody was arguing their heads off. I said, listen, Osita has the courage to come out, what you might call, against the current. He's a young man. He wants to test his popularity. He designed an excellent campaign template. I say, in my view, that template will not work because the state is not yet mature enough for it. But how will Osita get the experience to prepare better for another election if he doesn't go out in the field? He might test his popularity and it will turn out they vote for him. If a number of people vote for him, will you then say, oh, it wasn't zoned? They say, oh, I say it's not about supporting, it's about evolution, it's about affirmation of manhood. I will swim against the current and see how far I can go in it. Now, taking that further, an independent candidate should be able to test his or her strength. Can I, as an individual running for president, generate a machinery with which I run a campaign all over the federation, a machinery that will ensure that I have a party, what do you call it, a party representative in every booth in Jigawa, in every booth in Borno, in every booth in Oyo State, in every booth in Bayelsa, in every booth in Ebonyi State? If I can do that, then I'm part of national consciousness in a very comprehensive degree. There's one man I know who would have done that successfully in this country. He's dead. Chief M.K. Abiola. If he had run as an independent candidate, he would have won, because at that time there was hardly any Nigerian community, and I'm not talking about state capitals, that didn't have some mention of an intervention from him. He had a very robust and engaging personality, and in all his sophistication as a businessman, there was also a naivety and innocence about him that made him human, with faults that made people see him, this is a man like us, we can believe him. So anybody who can do that should not be allowed. The restraint, oh, we are not right for it. What does that mean? When will that be right? Who endorses? Whose thermometer is at work? The only thing I think we should be careful about is that of diaspora voting. Most of the North, from all available indications, you find that there are non-Nigerians, in the majority who have Nigerian identity cards. They seem to get it more easily than anyone else. And if you say diaspora voting, and voting from North Africa drowns the rest of the country, will you prevent the person from being sworn in? You're not able to manage your local card reader, but you want to rely on internet-submitted results, when America itself is crying that Russia rigged its own election. And these are very sophisticated nations technologically. So on the matter of independent candidacy, there's nothing wrong with giving it a try. It is the money and the effort of the candidate that's on the line. It will be a shake-up for the godfathers. When they see that an independent candidate lost, but that he got 30% of the votes, it will hit them. This guy or this lady got 30% of the votes, but me that spent 3 billion in this election, I got 47%. It means that I'm really not worth anything here. All these things will impact the evolution of political consciousness, the evolution of national consciousness, and will make participants more confident about the choices they make, about decisions they make. I will actually provide a basis for some people disregarding the godfathers. This man, we were laughing at him, see the number of votes he got on his own steam. Please, this man, we're always going to sit around in his house and he will just be talking anyhow. I'm tired of him. It will be good to have independent candidates.
Well, I'll take you up on my last conversation with you, where you said that Edo election may just be the rescue of the Nigerian state. I think that some will argue with you and say that Obaseki actually got...
May just be, sorry, I didn't get the word.
May just be the rescue of the Nigerian state. You said that when I was speaking with
directly.
you.
I'm trying to make out the word.
Rescue.
May just be what?
The rescue.
Oh, rescue.
Yes,
okay,
rescue of the Nigerian state.
Yes,
now, and I beg to differ.
Yes,
yes, you see, I beg to differ because some people will argue that Obaseki probably just got sympathy votes because some people perceived him as the weak candidate. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's a matter of opinion now. I say something, you disagree. Yeah, we don't have to agree. But the point is that sympathy vote for Obaseki is not quite the explanation. Because Obaseki has his own flaws. There are also people who are angry with him. So why is the sympathy also not tilting against him? Why I say it may be the rescue of the Nigerian state is that what is going on in Edo may make people more confident about taking independent decisions, making independent choices. I've been involved in political education programs where we spoke to the electorates that you must bear in mind that if I want to contest an election and I come and I give all of you 10,000 naira, it's not because I love you, it's not because I care about you. It is because I need to have your vote to emerge and I've paid you upfront. That means you've given me the license to wreck your lives if I want to. Therefore, if you value your life and you collect 10,000 from me, you should tell yourself that your future cannot be guaranteed by this 10,000 and that this 10,000 also does not remove your right to take a decision because the 10,000 in any case is probably stolen and is now being redistributed. Now, what am I leading up to with that regarding the Edo thing? Obaseki represents what you might call a rallying point for perhaps sometimes unclarified resentments and confusion around Edo and the unappealing braggadocio of the other camp. You know, no matter how strong you are, there is an inner decency in people that will make them ask, where are we going with this man? And it becomes worse if they've traveled a little distance with you in the course of some engagements, and your profile is standing before them, and all your speech is without reference or recourse to the fact that they also have an alternative point of view. And they will also assess your candidate. What's the history of this candidate? What are we likely to expect further? Who are those behind him? So some of these considerations may have been used to weigh the two of them, and they decided that Obaseki is the better of two evils. So for me, I'm not from Edo State. I do not have enough information to express preference for one or the other. But I think that it is what might rescue the Nigerian state, in the sense that the hot boiling pot of controversy that did not explode and yet led to the emergence of a governor in a keenly contested election is what more and more states will get used to doing. People won't be afraid of voicing their view. People won't be afraid of looking somebody in the face and saying, oh boy, I'm not going to vote for you, I'm tired of you people. Also, people who are carrying on as if they created the world. From their behavior, you ask yourself, do these people really believe in God Almighty? They are reduced to the wretched little human beings they, like all of us, are. And so they might begin to look for new friends and real friends. They might become more human. They might become more reasonable. They might become less presumptuous. And there's more than enough examples why people should do that, but they never learn. You know, a government came in 5 years ago. What has become of those who promoted and ensured that that government came in? They're all on the corridor crying and scratching the wall. Yet they are not learning anything. The very mistake that got them where they are today is what they are reinforcing. And you think that if you make a speech on TV, in a country where most people don't have electricity, or you give a press conference where half of the papers are unsold, or social media, which is full of mostly young people, substantial percentage of whom don't vote, you've spoken. Go to the people. Develop new ways of reaching electorates. They live in villages. There's no polling booth on the internet. Go and mobilize them. Talk to town union presidents. Talk to youth leaders who are being ruined. When you create a ferment at that level, not in state capitals, not rallies where people are paid. You know that political rallies, people take the contract, agree on the amount you'll be paid, and they carry you to the venue to fill the stadium. In a state, in a local government, it shows there's no political party and no party cohesion, no party activity, no political education. All of that should be reversed. And it just might happen that this will be the basis for it.
Indeed, after all is said and done, it's all about numerical superiority. Dr. Ikechukwu, I'd like you to hold your thoughts on those issues. We'll be right back with you. We have to take a break in news now. And one of the oldest and highest ranking traditional rulers in Nigeria, the Emir of Zazzau, Alhaji Shehu Idris, has died aged 84. Late Emir, who celebrated 45 years on the throne in February this year, reportedly died at the 44th Army Reference Hospital, Kaduna, at about 12 noon on Sunday. He was the 18th Emir of Zazzau and the chairman of the Zazzau Emigrate Council. May his soul rest in peace. And Dr. Ikechukwu is still with us in Abuja. It's good to have you back. Now, Doctor, when people... let me rephrase. Would you say grassroots consciousness politically came to play here in Edo elections? However, just like you mentioned earlier, there were incidents of vote buying.
Well, yes, but before that, you just made an announcement about the Emir of Zazzau, and I would like to pay respects to the departed spirit of a man who has been part of our history for a very long time. One of the traditional rulers who used to be one of the most powerful men in this country, who usually spoke little, and whom people felt comfortable to approach on all kinds of issues. And if you compare people like him and several others with what we have in many places today, you will understand that there's also a new culture that has taken a lot out of the traditional institution. And I believe that if our traditional institutions are populated mostly by men of visible integrity and personal dignity, even though they exist at the pleasure of the state governors, they will constitute a strong voice of advice when things matter. So I thought I shouldn't just overlook that announcement, because at some point as a young boy, I recall going for holidays in Zaria to my uncle's place who was then in Ahmadu Bello University as an academic staff, and all the rest of it.
You are in order.
On the so on the issue you raised, that's sorry. What was the point?
Yes, I was talking about whether you think grassroots consciousness politically came into play in this election so far. You know, and you also mentioned the fact that there were voter. Yeah, indeed, in Edo. Yes, well, I think one would want to assume there was a bit of that, because from what we saw, I was not in Edo State, but from what we saw on TV across various channels, it would appear that those who came out voluntarily, and in some of the most the furthest corners, nooks and crannies of the state. So my inclination would be to say that these people came out to vote because they have somebody in mind. So there appears to be an evolving political consciousness, but let's not assume that it's because of sustained political mobilization by any of the parties. I think it's drawn from the experiences of the people, their perception of existing unacceptable practices, their fear of what they may find unacceptable being brought back on their heads, and so they come out. So let the parties not celebrate and take it as proof there was mobilization at the grassroots level. No, I think it's emergent consciousness of survival reflexes by people who think enough. Now it's for the parties to invest in it. Obaseki's tenure, if I'm not mistaken, has not been particularly spectacular. He should now move away from the concept of development most of our governors deploy. I have tied this number of routes, kilometers. Don't you know we spent 8 billion on rural? Don't tell us the amount of money. Tell us that 1.7 million people in Edo State who didn't have water before now have water, and that it cost us this amount. And it's not that we dug boreholes for them, but we have a central reticulatory system, a water system that supplies the way it was before the war. It was in Benin, it was in Omaha, it was all over the place. So you're not wasting state funds. Let Obaseki see this as a chance the Almighty has given him to make Edo State exemplary. Why do I say exemplary? Edo is one of the states in Nigeria that has the human capital. It doesn't need half a finger from anywhere in the world to develop itself. And I speak from information, insight, and experience. Back in 1981, if you went into the admissions office, the academic office on the first floor of the Senate building of Ahmadu Bello University, and went to room 119, where the applications for admissions are normally stored before examination. If you go to the pipe from Bendel State, you will go from the ground to the roof, 3 rows. You look for JAMB admissions, the same thing. And if you look at the National Index of Development, human capital is one of the strongest points. But because the bulk of the South does not have access to where capacities matter, a lot of people are on the fringe of legality in their means of livelihood. Obaseki has been here in Abuja at NNPC. He has international exposure. He should move away from the funny corner, street corner concept of leadership that's all over the Federation and do a modern government. He should cut down on the expenditure of managing his office and that of his ministers, of his commissioners. He should focus on develop things that impact the local economy. He should look at roads in the state, not announce he has done them, but find out what materials will last, etc. So his people should be planning what to do to take Edo State into the 21st century, not celebrating we are back. Oga, you know, you give my boy, Minister of Commissioner for Finance. It would be a wrong way to waste his life at this age and at this stage.
Well, we don't know how that will play out, but it is indeed poignant to note that what is important is improving the lives of the citizenry of your state. Dr. Okey Ikechukwu would like you to hold your thoughts now. We want to listen to Emmanuel Okidi, the PDP National Campaign Chairman, what he said earlier.
Member.
So we're very happy today, in spite of what has been going on with all the frustration, the threats. But I want to say, even though I'm not the spokesman for the council, But being on the ground, I'm happy that the security agency, they tried so far. INEC, yes, they improved a bit compared to what I saw in Bayelsa. In Edo, they've done very well. And I think because they saw the resolve of Edo people. If you come to Edo, you will feel it. You see, it's PDP. Actually, it has been PDP all this while, but something went wrong. But thank God, that thing that went wrong has been treated. The surgery has been done properly. PDP is held and hearty in the Edo State. We have come back. I want to assure the people that will not disappoint them again. They should keep having confidence in us. Thank you.
Very good, Chief Ogidi. Now, what factors do you think led to the current narrative regarding the outcome of this election? We can see from the results that the PDP is clearly ahead, although we're still waiting for INEC to give us a formal announcement to that effect of the overall collated results. So what do you make of this scenario as well?
Yeah, of course, the performance of the governor. He did very well. You know, in terms of the jobs, you know, infrastructure and human capital development, he did well. But you see, when those his former colleagues come and start running him down, you'll be surprised. Because, you see, I also have some in-laws in Benin. In fact, I did part of my school here in Benin in 1975 instead of continuing education. So I know what Benin used to be. And of course, during the PDP days and so on, I was also here. Even the Adams or Shimole time, I was here. You see, this governor doesn't believe in rhetorics, flowery words, but he believes in action. And he has shown it. The Edo people appreciate all this. So they now felt that, look, if this man is given another 4 years, it will do better for us. It's going to add to our fortune. That's why they came out, in spite of the threats. You see, and I thank God, you see, when Governor Wike was put in house arrest, so to speak, and then the IG sought to reason, you see, let us not overheat the polity. Because 31,000 policemen, for instance, was too much for Edo State. Well, they said they wanted to prevent whatever. Well, we have seen it. All the culprits today you see are all the lions and tigers and gorillas and crocodiles that were brought instead of human beings. All the money they were sharing, all these things. Let me quickly use the opportunity. I don't know why Mr. President is waiting on the Electoral Reform Bill. Is it that the National Assembly has not taken it back to him? Or where is it hanging? Until that amendment is signed. You keep seeing what we are seeing today. I don't know what is going on. Mr. President says he's a Democrat now. I don't know what kind of Democrat he is or he's not. Because if we are Democrats, then there are democratic principles you must follow. Separation of powers. You have 3 distinct separation of powers. Yes, INEC so far, they are doing well. I hope there will be no phone call the way it went in Osun the other time, when a phone call from somebody changed the narrative. Nobody is threatening anybody, but please, for God's sake, do not dash the hope and aspiration of Edo people. There's so much jubilation in the town. People are happy. Since last night, everywhere is agog. So, INEC, don't take any phone calls again. Just declare the results from the field. That's my advice to INEC. The security people have done so far, they didn't harass us the way they planned to harass us. God touched them, and we thank God for that.
It's interesting that you've brought in the God factor. You're talking about the Electoral Act, but we also have laws.
Look, anything about God,
We are a religious country. Yes. Yes. You talked about electoral ads, but I want to talk about the recurring electoral violence, electoral fraud, electoral offenses that we keep recording during our elections.
As long as you have not...
But there are laws. There are laws that criminalize... Chief Ogidi, there are laws that criminalize electoral violence, electoral fraud. Is it that they are not elaborate enough? Or they're not being enforced?
They are there. But you see, some of them have been strengthened in the amendments. And everybody is very careful. We know that people break the law. We know that. No, I'm not saying that when you have the Electoral Act reform signed, then there'll be skirmishes here and there. But it will not be as prominent as this. People will be more careful. That's what we mean. If you say you're a Democrat, like I was seeing our Egbon Falego who says he's a Democrat, let him push for the reform. They will know it's a Democrat. It's not to come and take over and do so that you're a Democrat. No. Democrats allow the people in that place to govern themselves and rule themselves. There's too much of god-fatherism, and it's killing a lot of things.
Chief Emmanuel Okidi there, PDP member, National Campaign Council, Edo election. And we still have our guest in our Abuja studio, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu. Would like you to just react to what Chief Okidi said.
Well, I think, first of all, I would like to congratulate him for the broad-minded disposition. That commences by congratulating those who are part of the elections. Regarding his comment about the police, I would like to present a different perspective. 31,000 policemen for elections in one state is not too much when you have what you call an off-season election. That means you don't have elections taking place all over the federation. It also means that you're likely to find the thugs, robbers and election looters and snatchers of ballot boxes waiting around in the other states hoping to be recruited because right now there's only one state where there's a job for them. And they are likely to overwhelm the state. INEC officials will then be overwhelmed and will turn around to say that INEC is not doing its job. So we must contextualize it. If you have elections going on in all the states of the federation, and I'm a major supplier of thugs and ballot box snatchers, I won't have anybody to deploy to another state. But right now, this is what you might call the harvest season. Unfortunately, there's only one state where harvest is taking place. So if you don't have exceptional security measures, we will overwhelm the state. So it is within the context of that I think that, yes, the federal government is not mistaken at all in deploying 31,000 policemen, cover every inch of the land. Because there are people who have thugs and guns and who think, well, before the election ends, I must make between 50 and 250 million. So that's one. The other thing, of course, is, yes, he has told us Obaseki is likely to come back and he's going to do more, and that is because of his performance. I want us to make a distinction between record of expenditure, record of infrastructure developed, and impact on citizen welfare. I'm making this remark in order to lead to another point. Obaseki's return, if he does return, should focus on what will develop the local economy. Every state has its areas of comparative economic advantage. What is it Edo people do the most? They're in a riverine area. There's a lot of plantain in Edo. There's a lot of snail. There's a lot of fishery. How can I develop a local community? It is by enabling them produce and preserve more of what they produce. If, for instance, most people in that region, that axis in the country, have access to cheap stoves, ovens rather, some of them locally fabricated for drying fish, they will not be heading to the market every morning after an all-night fishing in the local rivers. He should concentrate on that. And in doing that, it's not the usual thing of, oh, you call a politician, award him contract and say, yes, we've provided it. This is time to bend down and walk. This is also the time to know that fish farming is not necessarily about rivers. Can he provide them tanks? Modern tanks that don't need to be in the rivers and reticulation systems that could enable them to do all of that. That's what he should now farm out into the local areas so that those places will come alive without always thinking of beneath the state capital. Those are the sorts of things to concentrate on. And as for the gains he has made, let him look at education. Let him do a sustained disaggregation. Okay, in the last 4 years, I spent X amount on education. How much of it went into building of schools? How much into procurement of desks and books? How much went into the training and retraining of teachers? How much are teachers being paid? Can I improve their salary and cut down on some other areas? Can I institute a prize for the best student at the WAEC level in every secondary school in Edo? In which case you're making the students to compete for academic excellence instead of trying to get involved in the reprehensible global drama called Big Brother. So the incentives you provide should be different. The National Merit Award, I think, for academic excellence is, I don't remember how it's some couple of hundreds of thousands. What do you get when you emerge as Mr. One Thing or the other or Miss One Thing or the other? He should know that development, transformation of Edo is about values. He should also think of security. Make security less visible and become a slightly more normal human being. Who is right? You see somebody who was normal, he suddenly becomes, takes up an office. If he's walking, there are scores of people running and beating everybody out of the way. Is he going for a robbery or is he just coming to meet the people he is governing? Let Obaseki give people something to make them say while he's living, we want another like this man. That's what the PDP, that was what Obaseki can do under the platform of the PDP. The party itself is badly in need of a rebirth. It's been, in my view, a totally incompetent opposition, but that's a matter for another day. The gain in Edo should be built on and should be used to reinforce the perception of the party as an alternative. Don't celebrate the victory. Prepare to celebrate a template of development that others would want to emulate after you.
Indeed. Being accountable to the electorate there. Those are the words of Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, a political analyst. You've been very strong in your views and your analysis have been very strong as well. We'd like to thank you very much for joining us on Newsday.